Hey, welcome back to the show, Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. I'm Arif Halaby, that's Jeff Gerard. Okay, look, required minimum distributions are this. That's when the IRS says you have reached the age of 70 and a half. And remember, if you followed us from earlier, it's the year following the year. Oh, never mind. Here's what it is. I am born in March, so the year that I turned 70 would be the same year I turned 70 and a half. So that means the next year, by that April 1st, is when I have to have my first distribution out of my retirement accounts. Even if I'm still working, if it's an IRA and I'm still working, I have to pull money out of that account. Now, my wife is born in October. That means her birthday's in October. The next year she would turn 70 and a half, which means now she has another year by April 1st. So she gets one more tax year if you're born in the second half of the year before you have to have your first distribution out. The second one still has to be by December 31st of that same year. All right, now here's where that matters. As you're doing that, and you are reaching in your mid to late 60s, and you're saying, like I met with a client last night, and he said, I'm 62. It looks like I'm going to be working at least another 10 years. So it would make sense for him, as he's getting closer to that age 68, if he doesn't need the money in his IRAs, to consider rolling that back into his 401k, because that, if he's still working and it's a current and active 401k, what does he not have to do?
He does not have to take the RMDs. And that's a really nice feature that a lot of people don't really employ in the tax code. You have these monies sitting out there, and I think you may have alluded to this earlier, is the fact that if you have a 401k and an IRA, you can't take money out of your IRA to satisfy what's needed to come out of your 401k, or vice versa. And for folks that have a bunch of old 401ks or a bunch of IRAs sitting out there, you have to really look at the mix of the two and take care of that and say, look, whatever I have to take from the 401k, I can take it from one, or I can take it from two, or take it from all of them equally. It doesn't matter. But I still have to take something from the IRAs. If you take all of those accounts, because assuming they're pre-tax accounts, traditional IRAs, traditional 401ks, traditional 403bs, meaning no Roth component in there, all those pre-tax dollars, assuming that your employer, your new plan where you are working, accepts those funds, you roll those in there. Now you're still working. It's a current retirement plan at work, 401k for instance, and you don't have to take that out. The only caveat is you can't own the company or more than 5% of the company.
Yeah, it has to be, because look, you think rich people haven't figured this out, right? Oh, I got a company, just start a company 401k. No, you have to be less than 5% owner of the company in which you have the 401k. So you might see a lot of these deals made in company parking lots. Country club parking lots.
Yeah.
Well, they kind of become company parking lots because,
right.
I can own Jeff's company, or I can own a company and Jeff is an employee, and Jeff has a company and I'm an employee of his company, and together we shake hands and I put my retirement account under his company because I'm an employee. I can do that. I can roll all of my retirement accounts under that. Do you get where I'm going?
Yep. Rich people make the rules.
They make the rules to benefit themselves and their friends. And in America, they apply to everybody. Here's the difference. They just don't have to tell you what they are. Do you understand? They apply to everybody. You can go. I've been to 46 countries on 5 continents. They would die to get to this country. People do. Why? Because the rules apply to everybody. All they want is a shot. No guarantees. The more guarantees you get, the less of a chance you have to succeed. They start bringing down that top. And so this world of retirement and deferring taxes and waiting till later and all of that is an amazing thing as long as you understand the rules. And you have a CPA that is powerful enough to ask the questions and research it, and not just, I read this in a book and this is the way it is and it's been this way for 60 years. And come on, man, they change the rules all the time. We have to go to classes regularly. My goodness, many times a year. Right? Because they're always updating things. They're always changing things in our industry. The tax world is no different. So consider this. If you have a Roth, R-O-T-H, Roth IRA, you are allowed to continue to contribute to it after age 70 and a half. But you are not allowed to contribute to a traditional IRA. So you might have a job, no company retirement account. The only place you can put money is in your Roth IRA. So if you are forced to take a distribution, tough luck. I'm forced to take a distribution. and you have earned income. Now, Jeff, tell me the difference. What does that earned income look like?
Well, earned income is basically W-2 or 1099 income for the most part. There could be some other things out there as well. But if you go trade your time for money for it in a job or a profession, and you get that 1099 or W-2, that's probably going to be the easiest way to solve that. If you're receiving money from a pension or Social Security or any type of rental properties or passive income where you did not go work from it, or dividends from investments, several other things out there, if you did not work for that money in which you receive it today, I mean, yeah, you could say I worked for it 20 years ago and I invested it, now it's paying me back. That doesn't work like that. You have to go work and have active earned income in order to put money in. Now, what some people don't realize is putting money in or rolling money over, those are two different things. Contributions and rollovers are two totally different things night and day. You can have zero earned income and roll money into another IRA or into a different type of tax status, but you don't get to put new dollars in. So meaning if you already had, like you've heard some people have Roth conversions, which I think we should also talk about as well. If you have a traditional IRA and you want to convert that over to a Roth IRA, and you're saying, look, I can afford to take the tax hit today. Whatever you convert becomes basically ordinary income to you. Okay, so let's say you had $50,000 in a traditional IRA, and you want to take $10,000 and you want to start converting that every single year, which we've seen people do, to get it away out of Uncle Sam's hands and get it out of the pre-tax side. They say, look, I've got business losses or write-offs. I want to take $10,000 and move it over. They can do that without any earned income at all. That's because they're not putting new monies into the Roth IRA. They're just changing the tax classification. So some people do that as a strategy leading up to, and in Arif's example, if you're in your mid to late 60s and you want to start moving some money from the pre-tax to the post-tax side so that by the time you get to that age of 70 and a half and you have to start taking RMDs, your liability could be very, very low. You may have very little on the pre-tax side, which means, hey, Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, it's not going to be an issue.
So remember this, deferring or putting off those taxes sometimes make a lot of sense, especially if you're not going to live in California. You know, a lot of people, we've looked at it through some of the events that I speak at and the dinners. Sometimes we'll do client dinners and things. I'm seeing about a third, between 25% and a third of the folks that come have plans. I ask the question usually, how many of you plan on retiring outside of the state of California? It could be anywhere. It doesn't matter, outside of the country or outside of the state. As long as it's outside of the state of California, I say, how many of you plan on retiring outside the state of California? And about 25%, sometimes a third, will raise their hand. Now, that matters because you can save income in your retirement accounts here. You can even have an amazing pension here. Then the day comes when you are now going to be taking money out each month and you are not a California resident, you do not have to pay California income tax. California has tried to go after those funds a couple of times, and in all the cases they have failed, because you can't say you're going to tax some a California resident who has moved here from Baltimore or Chicago or wherever, and then say, oh, well, but wait a second, we also want to tax the guy that doesn't live here anymore. You can't, which way do you want it? And whatever it was, they fought and they lost. I believe it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And so it's done unless something dramatic changes. But the state of California is not a very good manager of its funds. Everybody knows it. We're a one-party state. If you have any place where there isn't any competition, where people kind of push back and forth and there's ideas exchanged, you have generally a very homogeneous setup in Sacramento where all of the ideas are coming from one political party, either left or really far left, either progressive or really progressive. I mean, there's not really any contradictory ideas anymore, because they have structured the whole state. It's called gerrymandering, where you go through the whole state and you kind of block out the opposition so they cannot vote in any one group and have a representative. They've blocked it out so that the Republicans or the conservatives have a very minority presentation in nearly every district, minus just a handful. You can count on, two hands, the areas that have a majority. Even our district here in Santa Clarita, that used to be very, blue-collar, conservative, policemen, firemen, law and order type. Today it's a lot different. Today you have the 20-somethings that live here. You have a lot of folks moving up from the San Fernando Valley, even from the west side. So you are now a greater percentage of Democrats here in the city of Santa Clarita registered than you are Republicans. It's, I don't want to say amazing, but it is pretty dramatic that we elected a Republican congressman from an area that has a greater percentage of Democrats. That's just on the side note, but you can expect when you have a minority state-run organization, you're not going to get a lot of favor. Mm-hmm. Now, there's differences, right? Political is its own thing, but I want you to think about this for a second. If you and or a lot of the employees, the people that have the money, are planning on retiring either in a foreign country or in another state, who is going to be here to pay the taxes? You have to continue to raise taxes on the rich. They're the ones that will leave. You understand that. They have the money. They have the ability to buy a vacation home here and move somewhere else. They have the ability to go back and forth. They have the ability to fly their grandkids to come and visit them because they can financially do it. It's the ones that can't afford to, that are living just on Social Security or on government assistance. Those folks can't afford to leave because California is very generous in its benefits to those that are not working. So consider that. When you retire, the folks with the money, if you have money to be able to retire, by definition, will have the freedom or at least the option to leave. So what I'm saying is I see this as a kind of a snowball downhill. I see that there's eventually going to be a time when you can't tax people enough. We're already at over 14%. That means if you're state and federal and payroll tax and you're a small business owner, are you ready for this? You are somewhere around 60% of the money you make goes to state or federal taxes. I mean, would you stay if you make the next dollar you make, you only get to keep 40 cents?
No.
Right? So forget the politics. Just think logic for a minute. The guy or gal, I've had numerous friends and clients who are picking up their companies and leaving the state of California. We are a wonderful place to live, lousy to exist, financially speaking. And so add to that we focus on things like plastic bags. Darn those plastic bags. Now, if you were an employee of a plastic bag company, or you worked at the docks and you brought in plastic bags from China, or if you were the distributor of plastic bags, or you were a box boy at a grocery store and there's nothing to box anymore, right? What do? You're now forced to carry some of those bacteria-infested cloth bags that you now have to wash. Oh, wait, that's water. You have to wash those things. And, I mean, was anybody thinking about this?
They were thinking about the environment, Arif.
Yeah, the environment.
Yeah.
How about like a job? Let's think of a job and then the environment. I don't know. So we are stuck here, folks. I do not want you to be somebody with a big chunk of money in the end, not understanding that if you're going to retire here in California, you're also the person who's going to be paying for the privilege of living here in California significantly higher taxes. New Jersey tried it, went under. Maryland tried it, suffered. Michigan tried it, they suffered. Illinois tried it, still one of the top foreclosure states in the country is Illinois. And they have one of the most beautiful cities. Chicago's a beautiful city. And yet they still are one of the highest foreclosure states. People leave there and are going to states that respect the fact that if you work, you get paid. If you don't, we'll take care of you, but not forever. You've got to figure this out. And so you'll see some changes there. I want you to focus on this. Retirement accounts for you, your family, required minimum distributions is a ticking time bomb. That is the required amount that you are to take out. I want to come back in a second and give you a final strategy that I think just might work for some of you if you choose to stay in California. And for most of us, Jeff, you know this, same, we go where our children go.
That's
if our
right.
Kids are here, we're going to be here. We had a client recently whose one child got a job in Seattle, and the other one, it was a boy and a girl, and the other one got a job down in Houston. She's a geologist for the oil companies down in Houston, great job. and he works at a company up in Seattle, a tech company. And so they said, why do we stay here? Our children and grandchildren are not here. So they moved as well.
No, I told my kids they can move anywhere in the country that they want as long as it's within, about a mile radius of my house. So
as long as they all stay together, they have
That's
to
right.
flock together. So
we're going to buy the whole block.
Yeah,
That's what we're going to do.
We'll be back in just a minute. Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. I'm Arif Halaby. Hey, welcome back to the show. Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. I'm Arif Halaby. That's Jeff Gerard. Look, your family's finances count on you knowing some of these rules, because if not, if you make a mistake, there's a huge penalty, not a little one. We know about the 59.5 rule, which is pulling money from your retirement accounts prior to age 59.5. For most of you, and there's some exceptions in here, but for most people, you have to pay a 10% penalty. So you will pay the tax plus the 10% penalty. So that can be huge.
That's federal, state, and the penalty. There's 3 layers there.
Usually 40%.
Yeah, it's
That
huge.
means for every $100 you take out, $40 goes to taxes and penalties.
You better really want that purse or that pair of shoes if you're pulling it from your retirement account.
So what happens if you do not take? You say, oh, I'm fine. I have rental property. I have a pension, Social Security. My house is paid off. I don't need the money. And you're now at that year following the year you turn 70.5, and that big chunk of dollars is there. What happens if you forget or you just don't take enough money out? There's a penalty.
There is. It's a small one. It's only 50%.
Half of what you were supposed to take out, plus the taxes.
And you still have to take it out anyway.
Do you realize? So 50%, and then the taxes are going to be 20 and 5, let's say, and 15. So that's 40. So 40 and 90% of your money that you were supposed to take out at the age of 70.5, right, that year, you now have to pay in taxes, penalties, and fees. 90%, that means it's all gone almost, right? Go to lunch. Here you go. So you can't make this mistake. It's not a little one. This can affect your family's future, especially, look, the IRS is not quick to tell you when something's wrong. It would be nice if they said, hey, Jeff, yesterday you made a mistake on your taxes. Hey, it's good. It's April 17. We can fix it with small. No. They wait a year or two, and then they assess you penalties and fines and fees. They will get their money one way or another. They will garnish your wages. It doesn't matter. You cannot win. You have to do it correctly. So what is the correct way to do it? Very simply. Realize that each one of the accounts act independently. For example, all of your 401k accounts, you can have 10 of them from former employers. If they are still classified as a 401k, put them in one big bucket. And you have to assess the percentage dollar figure, let's call it 4%, of whatever that dollar figure is, you have to take out. Now you can take it all out from one 401k as long as it's, whatever, as long as the formula is, you can take it from equal amounts from each one, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. As long as that 401k number, you're taking out the percentage. However, let's say you also worked for a nonprofit for a little while, and you may have a 403b, and that's off over here to the side. The 403b, also known as a TSA, tax sheltered annuity, has its own formula. You still have to pay taxes out of that one. So the 401k and the 403b, those are two separate numbers. You cannot combine them and do the formula. You can combine them for the year, put them all in one bucket, make them an individual retirement account. You can do that. But if you don't, they still have to be taken out individually. And now the third one is the individual retirement account, the IRA, also known as a traditional IRA. That traditional IRA also has a similar formula that you have to take out a percentage. So in other words, you can't say, oh, I have this 401k sitting at the bank and it's just or this IRA sitting at the bank. It's in a savings account. I'm earning no interest. I'm just going to pull out all the money that I'm supposed to take out for those other accounts. I'm just going to pull it from that one. You cannot, because they are not the same classification, right? If they all say traditional IRA, no problem. If they all say 401k, no problem. But if they have different classifications, you have to take them out from each one. of those classifications. What's the mistake again, Jeff? Oh my gosh, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I made a mistake.
Well, good luck pleading your case to the IRS. We've heard of cases where someone legitimately made a mistake, or they sent in the RMD paperwork for the distribution and it didn't happen right away, or it got lost in the mail. We've seen very few cases where the IRS forgave that penalty, but it has been known to happen, but it's very slim. So I would always make sure that you do pay attention to those letters that come from the companies that hold your money. I don't care if it's an IRA, if it's a 401k, a 403b, it doesn't matter. They are supposed to, and they're required to send you that required minimum distribution letter. And you're going to see it probably early in the year. I've seen it come in January, the year that you may not be turning 70 and a half until December. But they're going to send it to you early in the year, and that's good diligence on their part, because they don't want to be responsible for you having to pay a penalty. It's just not necessary. Something else I want to touch on, Arif, you were talking about the April 1st for the first distribution and then December 1st for the second distribution. There is that's just a little bit of a grace period, that first one. When you turn 70 and a half that first year, you can take your distribution that first year.
Yeah.
And for some folks that actually works. So let's say, like in Arif's example, you had to take $4,000. Well, if you have to take $4,000 and then you have to take another $4,000 or something close to it, that's $8,000 in extra income next year. Do you really want to foot that tax bill? Maybe you can absorb it, but if you can't, feel free to have a conversation with your tax preparer and say, look, I think I want to take this before the end of the year so it's on this year's taxes and not next year's. And that way I only have one this year and one next year instead of nothing now and two next year.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Kind of confusing? Yeah, we'll check with your CPA. That's what they're there for.
And you can spread it out. By spreading it out, you can decide I'm going to defer taxes to later. And also, if part of the strategy is you're still working and you can still put money in your Roth IRA and say, gosh, I just don't want to take the money out. Can I just put it back in? You can put it right back into a Roth IRA, provided that you're working and provided that you have what's called earned income, but you still have to pay taxes on it, but it can come in the front door, go out the back, pieces of it go into the tax pile, and then you can go and put it into your retirement account for the later time, for the Roth.
And that's a nice strategy, because what some people do when they get to that age of the required minimum distribution age, you're already looking at some of the places you can gift your money before you pass away. I know that my grandparents, and I felt so badly as a kid, I didn't know how to accept a gift. And it was actually my great-grandparents. They were always trying to give me a little bit of money. And I didn't understand it at the time, but now I do. I get it now. So sorry, Grandma, Grandpa. A little late now, but the idea that someone is now going to start gifting money, if you're going to take money out of your retirement account and then go buy something with it, I don't know, people buy stocks and give it to their kids, or they buy real estate, whatever they're going to do, and they give it to their kids, grandkids. By putting it in the Roth IRA, number one, you can put the money aside and earmark it for your grandkids. They're not going to spend it, but they have an asset that's growing. And guess what? When you pass away and you give it to them, let's say you did invest it and the money did well, all of that's passed on to them tax-free. The money that you put in, any of the earnings, it's a wonderful, wonderful gifting strategy. So that Roth IRA passes on to the next generation. Whoever you call your beneficiary, it could be your son, your daughter, it could be your grandchildren, niece, nephew, doesn't really matter who it is. You can pass that on tax-free, and that's a nice strategy too.
And at a later date, we want to cover in more detail, because we're dealing with this as we speak with a particular client who left as a beneficiary. Instead of the individual for their retirement accounts, they left the living trust.
Yeah.
Now you might say, but I thought I was supposed to leave a living trust. You can leave a living trust as a beneficiary, just to understand the consequences. So we are certified estate planners, Total Financial Solutions in IM, and here's what it does. It just allows us to understand and to work with attorneys in this world of passing on money and what that all looks like. So consider this for a second. You now have your retirement accounts. It is best, of course, and most of the time, people leave it to their spouse, husband, wife, husband. After both of you pass away, or if you're divorced and you don't have a spouse, and you want to leave it to your children, it is best to put the children's name if you want to avoid a tax headache to them and the trust. So in other words, you're not going to list your trust as the beneficiary if it's a pre-tax account. You may want to consider speaking with your attorney and asking, what if I, instead of doing that, I list my children or my nieces or nephews or cousin or friend or boyfriend or girlfriend. You can list the person, because then they have an option to defer the taxes until a later date, as opposed to being required to pull it all out, pay the taxes today, come heck or high water, here's a big chunk of money. An example was somebody who has about $600,000. They left it to the trust, and we're trying to work through that and say, okay, they really meant to leave it to the person because the trust belongs to the person, but in the sense that there's one beneficiary to it. But after that, that could be $250,000 in taxes.
Unnecessary taxes.
Today, boom, gone.
Yeah.
So just realize that the goal is to defer some of that. If it is, and you don't want to just give it to the state or to the IRS, then consider naming as a beneficiary individuals. Here's the drawbacks. In a trust, if everything funnels down to the trust and your retirement accounts go there, you can list, I want Mary to get this much at age 25 and Mary to get this much at age 30, and then she gets the rest at age 35. You can do that. You can say, I want Joe to get half of it now, but nothing to his wife because I never did like that woman. And you can lay out all of those specifics. That is not something you can do if you make it, or at least not very easily, if you give it to them as the individual. All right, so there's a little bit of push and pull there. If you like this, well, you got to give up that. And remember that part of the living trust, if you will, as the beneficiary, is control from beyond the grave. It's making sure, hey kids, don't forget me. Every Christmas, you get $5,000 for the rest of your life. Don't forget me. That's one way to do it. You can actually make them every Tuesday wear a pink tutu and a sandwich sign on the corner of Market and 9th Street, right? Or Market and Main Street.
You have to really not like that person.
I would do that. I'm gonna leave you money, Jeff. You want it?
No, thanks.
You have to dance around like Charlie
No.
Chaplin.
I'm good, thanks.
You don't even know who he is.
Probably not.
You young whippersnapper.
Yeah, that's me.
You can make him learn an Elvis accent.
Do I have to use it on the radio?
You can do almost anything, guys, in your living trust. Did you know that? And you've heard stories. You've even seen some movies that are kind of cute. You have to be able to travel around the world. You got to give away $1 million. You have to do this. All of those are things that can be required. Now, unless you have a very large estate, financially it may not make sense because you're going to have somebody manage it. And that person's going to receive a paycheck from the trust. So it better be healthy enough of an account if you're going to draw it out for years and years and years, because somebody's going to have to manage the investments, somebody's going to pay the attorneys or the trust, right? There's going to be people that get paid in this process, and you don't want that to eat up the money that you plan on giving to others.
Well, that's a big deal. So remembering that the required minimum distributions can go directly to people. They can be deferred to Roth IRAs if you want to. You have to take the distribution, but you can put it in there afterward. That's a nice tool. Having the trust as part of your gifting strategy, just know some of the pros and cons to that. But gifting your money right out of these retirement accounts while you're alive, I think it's something that more and more people are doing anymore, so that they can have the benefit of seeing it before they pass away.
And required minimum distributions don't end when you die. The folks that are still alive and the beneficiaries, if we want them to delay receiving the big checks, and kind of spread it out, they have to take out still a minimum amount of money. They can take out more, they just cannot take out less. And then it's required to be taxed. It's based on someone's life, depending on when you pass away and how all that works. There will be a piece of it, a percentage, 4, 5, 6% per year forever that has to be taken out. So if you want the money to last a very long time, teach the people that you expect to have the money, the beneficiaries, teach them the ability to understand money. So if I'm going to leave you money and there's a required minimum distribution process in place, that you don't just spend it all. You get a new car, or you get new rims on your car. Or, hey, Dad, I got a new speakers for my car. It's the whole trunk, right? Grandma probably meant for you to have that money for college, probably.
No, she wanted me to have new rims, I'm
she
sure.
She did want you to have new rims.
Did.
It's a good grandma. Folks, look, there's a lot we covered today. I expect you to have some questions. Certainly, you can go to hometownstation.com, click on Total Financial Solutions. Send us an email. We'll be happy to answer it. We can do that at any time. We're here for you. We answer your questions on the air, even in private on occasion. And go to hometownstation.com. I'm Arif Halaby, and that's Jeff Gerard. We're here every week at this time, Tuesday from noon until 1, on your place for news, talk, and information. This is AM 1220, KHTS, Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour.